Good morning, everyone. Today we are in London to meet with John Hartz. He is the managing partner of Inflexion. He co-founded the firm in 1999. Inflexion is a part of the Alta Rock Odyssey 2023 vintage. Louis Flamand, our Chief Investment Officer, is meeting with him. Let's kick off.
Hi, John.
Hi there.
Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today in your offices in London.
Great pleasure, Louis.
We've known each other for a long time, as I have over 14 years invested with Inflexion on behalf of 3 different institutions, including Alta Rock. So it's really a pleasure for me to be able to interview you today. Could you please first introduce yourself and maybe share with us the key milestones of your successful professional career?
Of course, thank you. Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. As you're right, we've known each other a very long time, and it's a pleasure to be having this interview today. So look, I started my career actually in bankruptcy, so working with troubled companies, and I think that was a super grounding. I then joined Apax Partners, which is known obviously because Maurice was on the French side. I was in the London office, and I think he was probably in the very first investment committee. He used to travel to Paris for investment committees alternately in London. So it's very synchronous to be involved with Maurice again, which is super. Then after Apax, I then sort of co-founded Inflexion with my business partner Simon Turner, and we've grown that over the last 25 years to what we are today, which is about 10 billion under management with the 3 fund focus that no doubt we'll talk about. It's been lots of fun. It's been hard work, but it's been great.
And what is your role today at Inflexion?
So managing partner, so on the investment committee, the realization committee, the main operating committees of the business. But we have a large team that does most of the sort of deal related activity and obviously the operational side of the business as well. And so you see sort of across the whole business, but increasingly have many new members coming through running significant parts of the business as well.
And John, could you please introduce your firm, Inflexion, and its history to us?
Sure. So Inflexion obviously is mid-market private equity investor. Started our sort of life in the UK, but have migrated now to most of Northern Europe. And we started in 1999, so it's 25 years today, which is not today, but this year, which is a great thing. But when we started, we were obviously very small, and kind of the private equity industry in London didn't need another player. There was lots of other people, and the brokers knew who to go to. So we had to sort of fight our way into the market, which meant we did a lot of direct origination, going to meet entrepreneurs, finding out what it was they wanted to do, and then working directly with them. And I mention that, even though that was a long time ago, because that's how we operate now. It's very much in our DNA to be helping find solutions for entrepreneurs. And even today, 75% of the businesses we invest in, we're the first-time private equity investor, so working directly with entrepreneurs. And that's sort of how we've built up. We've then expanded that from a sort of UK mid-market basis to doing buyouts. We then branched out into partnership capital, where we take minority stakes with entrepreneurs, and also then our enterprise fund, which sits underneath the 2 flagship funds. And then roll forward a little bit more, and then we move into Europe. We have offices now in Amsterdam, Stockholm, and Frankfurt to cover the main sort of markets in Northern Europe.
Okay.
It's been a long journey, but we're working with some very talented people, which is always much easier.
And Simon and you have built probably one of the most impressive organizations in the mid-market. Could you talk about your team and the expertise that you've built internally at Inflexion?
Yeah, that's very kind words. We've certainly enjoyed the journey we've been on and are on. And as I said just now, it's very much about working with the people. We've had some very talented people we've managed to bring into the organization. And I think our culture is quite distinctive, and I think that helps people come in. It's quite a diverse organization. I think we're 40% females, which is very unusual in financial services, let alone private equity. But it's very deliberate. It was like that from the start. We want to bring other sort of risk tolerances, other relationships into making these very important decisions. So have lots of different feed-in points around the table. So that's always been very important. We've worked with a number of partners who've built it up, and as we've done that, as we've done more and more transactions, we've got more and more into sector specialisms. So we run 6 sectors now in the growth areas of the European economy: healthcare, business services, financial services, and more, but really focus on the growth areas, which is where we see opportunity and entrepreneurs see opportunity too.
And what has been the long-term performance of Inflexion?
It's been quite good. I think we've invested about 120 businesses over the last 25 years. We've sold over 62, actually 63 this morning, and the average return has been 3.4 times invested capital and a 35% IRR.
Oh.
So that's been pretty strong, and we obviously it sets a very high bar for what we have to do in the future, but we're up for the challenge, as is the rest of the firm.
And who are the typical investors of Inflexion, and what is their average commitment to your funds?
Okay, so they're very diverse actually. So at the very top we have some of the sovereign wealth funds in the world that are globally, and they're investing obviously quite large sums of money. Over $200 million would be typical sort of size, and over 100 as well. And then you move from them into sort of state, sort of country pension funds. So we have a pension fund in the UK, Sweden, Finland, who are looking after the pension funds of, typically state workers. So it's very much those who feel the sort of the governance requirements, if you like, for managing money for people like that. And then also in the US, state pension funds. So and then down to endowments, and also then quite a lot of entrepreneurs. So Altorock is obviously based on sort of business people and who've done well, and families, and we like having working with them because they lead us into lots of things. So it's actually very, very diversified, from quite large at the top to relatively small at the bottom. But
got it. And what do you think differentiates Inflexion the most from its peers in buyout?
That's one of the most difficult questions, because I always find it hard to answer that one. But I think probably it's culture. I think there's, a lot of private equity firms have lots of very clever people, but I think we have a culture that is very pro-business, very pro-entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs really at the center of what we do, and we listen to what they want to do and hear the solutions they want. And they may not want to sell control, which is why we have a partnership capital fund to take minority stakes in really great businesses. So we're it's a culture of sort of ambition and wanting to grow and solve problems and go forward, rather than being about the money. That's sort of obviously important, but I think that's a big differentiator. Of course, when it gets into the actual business sort of transactions, knowing about the entrepreneur's business is very important. So sector specialism comes to the fore, knowing what the issues are with what's happening in an entrepreneur's business, what's happening in the market, what's happening in the US, what's happening in Asia. These are very important things. So we have offices in Asia to help us with this, to get the intel on the ground, so we can help solve entrepreneurs' problems. So it's very business focused, very entrepreneur focused, and sort of a listening culture.
Yeah, very clear. And could you please present the first two investments of Inflexion Partnership Capital Fund 3, yes, which is the fund that Altorock Odyssey 2023 invested in?
With pleasure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the commitment. We're delighted to start off with Altorock in this way. The Partnership Capital Fund is unusual. Maybe I could take a couple of minutes talking about the derivation of that. Because I mentioned we go to market very much off market, and we're meeting with entrepreneurs well before there's some sort of process. And a lot of those things are quite bilateral. We don't know what the entrepreneur wants to do, whether he wants to sell control or sell a minority stake. So we set up our Partnership Capital Fund in 2014, so 10 years ago. And it's really the first minority-focused fund in Europe. Since grown to a much larger fund, and you kindly backed our third fund in this area. We've invested about £2 billion in that strategy. So the third fund, which you invested in, we've made 2 investments so far. We closed that fund earlier this year. The first one is a business called GlobalData Healthcare. This was a carve-out from a quoted company in the UK, where we bought out, we think, their best division, which was the healthcare division, and it provides sort of critical data for pharmaceutical companies, things like sort of pricing data in different markets, so they know how to price clinical trials data on results. So it's things that must have information. It's the number 3 global player in that market. It's founded by an entrepreneur who we've known for a long time, and he was frustrated with the valuation he had in the public market, and so we were able to sort of carve out a division. The PLC, the public company, keeps a majority stake. We have 38% of the company, but we can help him sort of grow that business as a separate valuable unit within the public company. It's complicated, which is why it's only really transactable on a one-to-one basis, so there was no competition for this transaction. We think we got it at a lower price than if it had been sort of a separate unit by several turns of EBITDA. And we have a great structure. So we have all our capital is in preferred instruments, and the PLC has invested, I think, £680 million below our capital. So they're in a first loss position. So it's a really attractive structure, but it's a great growing business, growing revenues, I think, at CAGR of 15%, and very high margin business, as is normal in data businesses. So, and a great opportunity to grow that business internationally through M&A. So very excited about it. The very unusual thing about this business, though, is that we agreed the transaction at the end of last year, before the year end, and for regulatory reasons, we only write the check on Friday. So, so we have a 6-month period where we've been able to work with the management team, do the carve out, bring in the specialist people that we wanted to in the company, start to look at their operational things, make their operational improvements without actually having written a check. So it's been a really showcase piece like that. So we're very delighted with how that business is progressing. So then the second business is a business called Easyfairs, which is an events business based in Belgium. It's a business, we've known the entrepreneur, Eric, for about 10 years, and we've tracked him for a long time. He never wanted to sell. We kept on asking whether he would do a transaction. He didn't want to do it, which is very normal for us. When you're off market, they're not for sale, so you keep talking. And we talked all the way through COVID, when events businesses were obviously banned from happening, so there was a difficult time for them, but we helped him with some ideas, and eventually when he did want to make a transaction, we were there to make a sort of a partnership capital investment with him. Business is in a growth area. If you look at the top 10 global events businesses in the world, only one is still founder owned, and that is Easyfairs. So we're partnering with the last one that's sort of available, if you like. Again, another first-time private equity investment. He's never taken any external capital in, so we get the opportunity to sort of professionalize their working, help them enter the US market. So delighted with both of those transactions.
Fantastic. And now turning to the private equity market, what's your perspective on the current market environment? Do you think it's a good time to invest?
I mean, our investment strategy is to buy high growth, high margin businesses. And I suppose we have the luxury of a long period of time of being in business doing this. Just, we only do this strategy, we don't do anything else. So, and I think we look back at our returns, how did we do during the global financial crisis? How have we done in the bull market? How have we done Iraq, Afghan wars, Brexit, Euro crisis? I mean, all this time we have analysed how we've done, and actually we've still consistently done these returns I was talking about, 3.4 times the money returns. And so we're very confident that strategy works whenever. We're much more interested in, can we find high growth, high margin businesses in growth markets where we can help them grow? And we find them kind of all the time. So, if you read the newspapers now, the headlines aren't very, promising. Interest rates are higher than they've been for a long time. There are cost of living crisis for consumers. There's all sorts of reasons to be negative, but nonetheless, we still find really attractive businesses where entrepreneurs are restless. They want to get forward, And the two examples in the partnership fund are great examples of that. So, I'm not concerned about it. We're cautious, but I don't think there's any sort of things to completely worry about which can't be dealt with, when you're investing. I think the other concerns in the private market, since you asked, are selling businesses, so realising, which is obviously an important part of what we do. And there, I think we've been fortunate, maybe lucky, maybe we planned ahead, but we sold a lot of businesses. I think in the last 2 years we sold one every 45 days, which is pretty exceptional. If you look at the market, though, there's a big overhang of unrealized private equity deals. I think 30% of only the larger businesses, the larger private equity groups have only sold 30% of their pre-COVID deals. We've sold 65%. And I think that's important so we don't have a sort of hangover in our portfolio, which means we're confident about going forward. And if you think about the business models of some of those things, they didn't have a capital structure set up for higher interest rates. Business models have changed. Working from home wasn't a thing in 2018, 2019. It clearly is now. So I think we're in good shape. I think it gives confidence to the investment committee to make new decisions, and that may be different for other players. So I think we're confident. We're not overconfident, but our history tells us that sticking to one investment strategy has been our success.
That makes a lot of sense. And how do you see the private equity market evolve over the medium to long term?
I think I'd start by looking at the public markets. If you look at the public markets, particularly in Europe and in the US, in the mid-market in the US, they are not performing for entrepreneurs and businesses. I think it's the Russell 2000 has not gone up in 3.5 years. I mean, we know that the large market, NASDAQ and things have increased a lot, but actually mid-market businesses have not performed in public markets. In Europe, it's very similar. In the UK, it's even worse. So that's minus 20%. So, I think entrepreneurs and businesses of the sort of scale that we're involved with up to sort of 1.5 billion euros, they need another solution, and private equity is that solution. And so I think on the medium term, I think we have a great opportunity in that part of the market. And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners understand private equity, they can see the benefits of working with a shareholder who is completely aligned with them and can help them, has the resources. We have large value acceleration team who can help on commercial strategies, cyber and AI and all these tasks that need to happen. ESG, super important for building valuable businesses. And I think we have all that to help entrepreneurs, and the public markets kind of don't. So I think long term, the private equity is a growth market, and as more people realize it, you're bringing high net worth investors into that as well. It'll just get larger. I think that's a very positive thing.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for presenting the fantastic firm that you've built, Inflexion, and thank you for sharing your insights for the private equity market.
Louis, it's been a pleasure. It always is seeing you. You've been a part of it for over half of our life, so we're very grateful for that. We're delighted to be invested in by Alterac.
Thank you.
Thank you.